We're excited to have ITTS member Elizabeth Preswood of Missouri DOT as the moderator of our first session. She will introduce our two speakers who will take us into the woods and backgrounds of federal highway rural routes, American agriculture, and the logging industry impacts and challenges. Thank you, Liz.
Good morning. Thank you, Frank. First, I'd like to welcome Grant Zitting. He joins us this morning from Weyerhaeuser, where he serves as the transportation manager. Frank started his career as in transportation as a driver and has held a variety of positions, including director of fleet operations. He has worked for various forest industry companies across the country and has worked in both transportation and manufacturing. Grant holds a certification from NPTC as a certified transportation professional. Thank you, Frank, and we'll get the screen turned over to you.
All right, Grant.
All right. Can you see my screen all right?
Yes.
Good deal. Okay, well, first of all, I'd like to thank Mike, Frank, Jimmy, Liz, and the entire team for the opportunity to speak to you this morning. First of all, let's start off with kind of a background of Weyerhaeuser. Weyerhaeuser was started in 1900 by a gentleman by the name of Frederick Weyerhaeuser. It's been in business for 121 years. And the left side is kind of when we started, and the right side is where we are today. We are 9,300 people strong, and we have about a $20 billion market capitalization. We have three different main divisions in our company. One is timberlands. We have more than 12 million acres in the US and another 14 million under long-term leases in Canada. The next company is very small compared to us. I think it's like 7 times smaller. So we've got great scale and diversity. Another one is our real estate, energy, and natural resources. It is where we do land sales. We also lease for energy, wind energy, and oil drilling. Then we have our wood products where we manufacture and distribute lumber. We operate across the country. Our Pacific Northwest is where we hold quite a bit of our timberlands. We'll focus down here in the South, but we also have some in the Northeast. We did just recently sell the Midwest. And like I mentioned, we have stuff up in Canada. So sustainability is the reason we're even in business today. I'd like to point to this 100% of our timberlands is reforested after harvest. And that's something that Weyerhaeuser did right out of the gate, down in 1900 when he started, or shortly thereafter. His philosophy was keep planting for the future. So, and then also today we are 100% certified to sustainable forestry standards. And overall, we only log about 2% of our entire holdings year over year. Our people are definitely our secret weapon, and most of our 9,300 employees live in rural communities, and that also includes contractors that we provide work for as well. So we have a huge impact on the rural communities and their viability. So our footprint in the southern states is pretty big. We have about 7 million acres overall. Now, overall, as a company in the United States, we have about 50,000 miles of company roads. And in 2018, the interstate system was about 48,440 miles. So we're roughly about the same. Our road system is roughly about as big as the interstate system is. We use about 1,600 trucks a day across 7 regions. And then we have load tendering systems that are located throughout the South. The majority of loads for 5 of our 7 regions go through these centers, which provides a much better use for our trucking capacity. So like I mentioned, we use contractors quite a bit, and especially exclusively in our hauling. We don't have any company trucks in the South. They own their own tags, their own company, DOT number, insurance, everything. They control their entire business. They can come and go as they feel is best for their business. But there are some things that are affecting them that also affect us. And so we have kind of a coordinated effort in addressing these. And those issues are safety, drivers, insurance availability and cost, regulatory issues, and of course, routing. And that routing issue is a huge one and can affect the other issues as well. So safety. One thing about safety that a lot of people don't realize is that most every issue has some function of safety to it. Insurance, for instance, is a huge part. Safety is a huge part of it. So, and just costs, particularly overall, as you get looking through the entire supply chain, safety is a big component. So, one of the big issues we have are accidents. Our routes lead through towns, school zones, and a lot of two-lane traffic. And this is one reason we'll focus quite a bit on safety and routes, particularly. So frequency and loss rates, of course, in our industry is much higher than we'd like to see, and much higher than most every other transportation segment. So, which is one reason our insurance rates are so high. And then, of course, down equipment due to an accident causes our contractors a lot of inefficiency and funds to be able to keep their businesses going. Drivers are an issue across our entire industry, but log truck driving particularly is getting hit hard. One reason is we have an aged workforce. There was a study out west that showed that truck drivers were 60 years age or older on average. The Bureau of Labor Statistics said an average truck driver is 55 years old. So as you can see, they're getting really close to retirement age. And then of course you also have health issues when you're starting to get into those ages. So insurance requirements for log truck drivers are much higher, particularly because there's so much contact with the public. And so you've got to really be on top of your game. And then the younger generation particularly is growing up in or moving to the urban areas. So, they really don't see truck driving as a legitimate source of income or taking care of their family or as a career. Insurance, so the cost is just skyrocketing. We have people paying up to $26,000 per truck per year, which is multiples of the industry standard. It's getting so bad that it's shutting down some of our haul contractors. We've heard of people that can't get insurance for under 30, and of course those guys just can't afford it, so they're not working. Also regulatory issues. A lot of our contractors are small operators, and so they really don't understand the regulations or even how to work within those regulations. So that causes some additional inefficiencies, or even in some cases fines, because they've done something that shouldn't have been done. So routes are particularly important to us. Of course, we load and transport our logs. We load in the woods on our land. Transport them on our own roads onto the public roads where they connect with the public roads, and then from there go into the mills. And for the most part in our system, we use secondary roads because of the weight issues around using the interstate. So as a result of this, we contribute to some legislation, research into some legislation called the Safe Routes Act. This Safe Routes Act was commissioned by the Georgia Forestry Foundation, and the lead investigator is Dr. Joseph Conrad. So what the Safe Routes Act is really saying is we should really be using the interstate system as much as possible and get off these secondary roads because it's much better for the public and much better for us to be able to do that. And of course, the big issue surrounding that is the weight limits. Each state has its own weight limits, so we're unable to use the interstate. So that's why this research is being done. So the reason we want to start using the interstates is to bypass cities and towns, get out of one-way traffic, avoid intersections and stop signs. You can even put school zones in there. To me, if you can avoid one school zone, you're money ahead. The risk there is very high. The cost, so travel time is a big issue. The distance isn't quite as much as an issue, but also fuel economy is a big issue. And then infrastructure, these higher weights on these secondary roads just beats the pavement up, and really creates damage to the pavement. And also bridges get a lot of that beating up because they're just not built to stand that kind of weight. So the research was done in 3 different states. Our wood baskets that we researched were in Alabama, Georgia, South Carolina, and North Carolina. And we'll just highlight some of those. So what we want to try to do is get the current status, you can see, is in the black, and where the miles that could go onto the interstate is in the red. So of course you can't get 100% of the miles onto the interstate, but you can get, as you can see, you can get portions of these routes onto the interstate. So some of the reasons we want to do that, and the safety benefits around it, is there's 41 fewer intersections in the study if we were able to use the interstate. So 89 intersections versus 152 intersections. 33% fewer stop signals or stop signs and lights on interstate routes, 12 versus 18. And also just remember that 40% of the crashes occur at the intersections. And so when you can eliminate an intersection, you're eliminating quite a bit of the risk. Other safety considerations, fatal crash rates on the interstate is 2.99 per 100 million miles traveled. And in our current routes, it's 4.11 across the wood baskets that were looked at. School zones per route, the interstate is 1.3 and our current is 2.2. So almost 1 school zone per route to be eliminated. Cities and towns per route is, the interstate's 2.5 and the current is 3.9. So we could even over one average 1.6 or 1.4, I'm sorry, 1.4 savings on average. So the efficiency improvements from the interstate access. As you can see, this is miles traveled. Across the wood baskets, there really isn't a miles savings. There is a couple, Bruton saw a little bit of a savings, but they're either the same or maybe even just a little higher from a mile standpoint. But as you can see, travel time is greatly reduced. Augusta, Georgia, is 15, where the average is 8 minutes saved per route. So that is really, when you're talking about thousands and thousands of routes, that's a lot of time saved. And there are a couple. Brunswick, where I'm out of today, speaking from you today, is 1. So statistically, Brunswick is one that won't see a whole lot of advantage. There are some, but it's not as big as it is in the other areas. And that's because our wood is flowing from the west to the east, and our interstate is north and south. So most of our markets either flow into the mills, or they flow across the interstate into our mills into the Brunswick area. So there are, like I said, there are some where you're not going to see as big a savings, but there are definitely some big savings. So the estimated travel costs, Augusta is 2.5 million, just a highly significant savings. And then average is 1.2 million on an annual basis. So this is all on an annual basis. Also, it's just not the haulers that see this, but it's also the loggers that see the savings. And with the way our margins are, a little bit of a savings is a huge help. We have some very tight margins, not just on the hauling side, but also the loggers. So as you can see, the loggers also benefit because they can get more wood moved over time. Bruton, their loggers would see 21,492 on an annual basis, where the average is 13,000 on an annual basis. So infrastructure and environmental, 550 gallons on an annual fuel consumption savings across 6 wood baskets. So a significant amount of fuel could be saved. 600 tons of CO2 could be avoided being put into the atmosphere. And just a side note, that's an equivalent of 1,200 passenger vehicles. So quite a bit of savings. And then 4.9 million in annual reductions to the pavement damage across all 8 wood baskets. So as you can see, there's really some significant savings. So, you know, this is just some of the deeper southeast states. This isn't across all the states that this was looked at. So let's go ahead and do some case studies, just kind of show you where some of these benefits could be from all. Here in Augusta, Georgia, for instance, you can see this harvest is right here by the interstate, but not able to use the interstate. So in order to get to the mill, they have to travel through all these towns on the secondary road. So let's take a look at that. To take the highways system, it is 1 hour and 46 minutes where the interstate is 1. So it's a 43% savings on travel time. Intersections, there's 9 intersections on the interstate route where there's 125 intersections on the highway route, which is a 93% savings, a great reduction in risk when it comes to safety. Stop signs and stoplights, there's 7 on the interstate route, 27 on the highway route, 74% savings. There's 2 cities that you don't have to go through if you go on the interstate, so it's 67%. And the interstate route has absolutely no school zones, where on the highway you do have to go through 1 school zone, so that's 100% savings. And one that was really pointed or stuck out at me was the interstate is a 1.31 per 100 million miles traveled on fatalities, where the route that they had to take was 3.9 fatalities per 100 million miles. So a 66% savings just from there, a much safer route and even a less expensive route when it comes to the states. So another very interesting one, and this is why I decided to choose this one, up by Roanoke Rapids, North Carolina. So in order to get from this harvest unit to the mill, you have to go through a town called Emporia, Virginia. And all trucks are restricted from going through this town, but the interstate and the town has bridges that go over a river, and there's no good alternate route to get over this river. So they made an exemption for forest products to go through the town. And let me just show you what it looks like. This is the interstate as you're going through Emporia. This is where on the left side, and on the right side is Emporia, where the log trucks go through. And as you can see, it's downtown. You know, I know just from experience that that's really not a good place for trucks to be. So now the statistics on this one is the travel time is 36 minutes on the interstate, 50 minutes on the highway. which is a 28% time savings. Number of intersections is 31 on the interstate and 85 on the highways. And as you can see, some of those intersections are pretty tight. So 64% savings. Stop signs and lights, 3 on the interstate and 9 on the highway. So that's a 67% savings. School zones, you save 1 school zone there. Another a large fatality crash rate per 100 million miles, 1.94 on the interstate and 4.06 on the highway. So quite a bit of a comparison there. So weight parity on the highway, on the interstate highways would improve safety and efficiency. The safety improvements would be a 41% reduction in interstates, 33% reduction in stop signals, and a 45% reduction in urban miles. Efficiency would be an average of 8 minutes of travel per trip from travel time, and then 7.4 million miles estimated on an annual travel cost, and that's loggers and haulers combined. Other benefits is driver retention. It's a much more driver-friendly route and an improved quality of life for some of the communities. So getting some of these trucks out of the communities where they really don't belong. So some of the solutions that we as Weyerhaeusers continuing to work with our contractors, we work with our local colleges for truck driver training, trying to get more of the young people into driving truck. Technology is another big issue. Cameras, this is just a new initiative where the cameras, you're able to coach, try to avoid situations from happening, and then they're good for investigating after something does happen. So of course, the big thing is to avoid any incident from happening. Automatic load securement devices. So these keep a pressure on the load. So as the load settles, they just automatically tighten, which keeps the load tight and always in control. And then safety training that's focused strictly on log truck drivers. We're partnering with the FRA with a online course called Team Safe Trucking, which has safety modules that is focused on the wood hauling industry. Regulations. So the Safe Routes Act, that's one thing that we're really backing to improve safety and efficiencies throughout the South. The new short haul miles really is a huge benefit. One of the issues, of course, is people that just sit in their trucks all day. But our drivers, if they're in their truck driving for 3 hours, that's a long route. So typically they're out of their trucks every hour or 2 hours walking around. And then we're also working with the forestry and trucking associations on regulations to try to help improve the industry altogether. And then load tendering systems that reduces the number of trucks needed, get our wood to the market more efficiently. Then over time, with the safety enhancements that we talked about, increasing our insurance rates, getting a better story out there. And that's really going to be important with the Safe Routes Act, getting these trucks out of these routes where they just are in high-risk situations. So through processes, technology, and organization, we continue to move our product to the market the absolutely most safest way we can, the most efficient way possible.
All right, thank you, Grant. We have a couple of questions in the chat box, so we'll see if we can get through a couple of those before we hand it over to Caitlin. Our first question comes from Virginia Porter, and her question is regarding routing. What is the best way to communicate the shortest route? For example, lower class roadways, poor geometrics, challenging grade for trucks. Is it always the best route? Is this the responsibility of the state DOT, US DOT, routing software company, or individual driver? Who determines the best route for these trucks?
From our aspect, we look at what the state requirements are, because you have bridges, for instance, that may be lower weight bridges. They may need replaced, so that there's restrictions placed on them. So we work with our foresters on determining that best route. And then we work with our loggers to make sure our trucks understand the best route. And a lot of that too is local knowledge with our drivers. And so I'd say it's a combination of all of those. Communication, of course, it comes down to the responsibility of the driver to know, but we do everything we can to make sure they understand what it is, which route's the best legal, safest route.
Okay, thank you. We have another question in regards to the interstate route. You spent a lot of time talking about the improved efficiency and safety of getting these haulers onto the interstate. So the question is, would the interstate routes be more viable if lumber haulers use the lowest traffic volume window times, like 10 to 11 a.m. or 2 to 4 after the rush hours? One of the biggest issues I have encountered with loggers and bark and pine needles blow off, could the industry provide better retainage to allow for higher speed? So it's kind of a two-part question.
Okay, so I may need you to repeat that second one. So the first part is, would time traveling be a good option? And we've tried some of that, but there are so many factors that go into it that we've found that it's best to just operate as safely as possible. Of course, when you do have, like, let's use Charleston, South Carolina as an example. There are some wood yards down in the downtown, not downtown, but in the port areas. So we do try to push our drivers through there at a certain time, but there's so many things that happens that it's not really possible to say we only want to have them there between 9:30 and 2 o'clock. I would love to be able to do that. That would make things much easier, but because of so many factors, including getting unloaded, traffic jams, accidents, you just don't know. So the best thing is to just travel safely to the mill. What was the second one, Liz?
The second part of that question was better retainage of blow-off material from the haulers, like they specifically mentioned bark and pine needles blowing off and hitting other cars.
Yeah, and we inspect every load. No, we don't. Our contractors inspect every load before they leave the woods. They even have a saw there that they'll cut off limbs, try to get the anything that's going to blow off that truck before it leaves. Okay. We're working on some of that, but unfortunately it's ag products, and that's a difficult thing to get 100% of it off.
I understand. I'm going to get one more question, then we're going to turn it over to Caitlin. What would it take to get safe routes adopted in various regions of the country?
It's going to have to be a national law, because it has to do with the interstate system. One of the big obstacles of using it is that you have to go down to an 80,000 pound weight limit, whereas many of the states are 2 to 6, even 2 to 6 tons over that. So if we were to cut every load down to 80,000, it just our haulers couldn't make enough money to make ends meet. So very quickly we would end up unable to operate. But it's going to have to be a national thing. Oregon and Washington already have 105,500, so 105,500 pounds weight limits with axles. So you have to add axles as you add weight. But they do that, and they operate very efficiently, and they get trucks onto the interstate and do a good job at it. And I'd like to see that here in the South.
Okay. Well, Grant, thank you very much for your presentation. I think we all learned a little bit more about your perspective from freight hauling through the logging industry. To our audience, keep posting questions. We'll have some time hopefully at the end to get some more. But for right now, I'm going to turn it over to Caitlin Hughes and give her control of the screen and give her presentation.